Hello everyone, welcome to this video. This video about sports injury management for coaches. This video will be helpful for physical education students and young coaches who are entering the field of sports. So this will help them develop an understanding about how the coach should be participative in sports injury management. So in this video, we'll cover different type of sports injuries, what are different kind of sports injuries, what are the factors associated with sports injuries, what should be the immediate management for injury, and what should be the long-term management for the injuries. So first of all, why should a coach learn about sports injury management? Why is it important for a coach to understand the mechanism of sports injury and sports injury management? It is very important for a coach to understand sports injury management so that the coach can recognize different type of sports injuries. So sports injuries can be of different kind, as we will see further in the video. So he should be able to recognize that an injury has happened, because injury has a long-term and short-term impact. So recognition of an injury is very important. If the injury is recognized, then proper care can be taken about that injury. And coach is the one who should be able to provide that care to the athlete around his injury. He is helpful in this understanding can be helpful for coach in creating protocols for emergency management. He is the one, he is the manager for the team. So he needs to take care how things will be managed if there is an emergency, and to provide the basic first aid on field and in other areas also. So he should be able to manage basic first aid along with the staff that he has for the players, and this in turn helps in development of long-term development of athletes. So it helps in athlete development if he has a sound understanding about sports injuries, and it can also help coaches in developing prevention strategies to prevent sports injuries. So what are different type of sports injuries that can happen? So there are mainly two type of sports injuries which can happen to an athlete. One is traumatic or acute, and the other one is overuse injuries. So acute injuries are can be contact injuries or indirect or non-contact injuries. So what is an acute injury? If something has happened immediately, just all of a sudden in the nick of the time, that is an acute injury. Okay, and this can be because of the contact with the other player, or this can be because of non-contact. So if we look at these injuries, the direct or contact injuries could be head injury, a player colliding with another player, or player colliding with the goal post, which is a contact injury. There has been a contact. And there is a non-contact injury. Someone had a fall. He was landing after a jump, and he twisted his knee and he fell down and injured his knee. So this is one example of non-contact injury when there was nobody around him, but still he suffered an injury which is acute or immediate injury. He was not carrying anything. It was not a result of any overuse or training or anything. So it just occurred. And the other kind of injuries are the overuse injuries. Overuse injuries are generally because of repetitive overuse of any muscle, joint, tendon. So all these lead to overuse injuries, which are cumulative, which is the cumulative effect of training at times repetitive movement, at times because of not so proper technique of sporting technique or mechanics. So as we'll see further, both these injuries can occur in all the structures of the body. The structures in the body are the bone, the tendon, the joint, ligament, muscle, bursa, or nerve. So as we will see, the traumatic injuries can happen in the bone. It can happen in the bone, and overuse injuries can also happen in the bone. We'll come to those examples in the next slide. And all these injuries can happen to all the structures: bones, tendon, joints, ligaments, muscles, bursa, and nerve. So as we see here now, that acute injuries of bone are the fractures. So if someone falls down and he breaks his leg, So that is a fracture, so which is an acute injury. But on the other hand, bony injury can be overuse injury also, because of regular stress on the bone. It can lead to stress fracture or bone strain or stress reaction. So these are the overuse injuries of the bone. Similarly, in the cartilage, there can be a traumatic osteochondral. There is a layer of cartilage over the joint, over the bony part of the joint. There is a layer of cartilage. Okay, so fractures or microfractures can happen in those areas, and there can be chondromalacia patellitis, one of the condition where in young people the kneecap, the undersurface of kneecap is being eroded very fast. Okay, so that is the overuse injuries. In the joint, similarly, there can be dislocation and subluxation. I'm sure you must have seen the shoulder coming out of the joint when someone falls down. So it happens quite often on the sports field. So such dislocation or subluxation can happen in joints, which could be traumatic, or there could be osteoarthritis, like of means more wear and tear of the joint over the years, leading to chronic or overuse injuries of those joints. So ligament injury, when someone sprains a ligament, like an ankle ligament, when someone falls down while landing and the ankle is twisted, there is ligament injury, which is acute injury. And similarly, there can be inflammation because of overuse in the ligament, which could be again chronic or overuse injury. Muscles and tendons also behave in a similar way. There could be acute strain in the muscle, like hamstring getting pulled suddenly, or quadriceps getting pulled and torn suddenly, or there could be overuse injuries of the tendons or muscles, which are because of repetitive use of the same muscle, or in this case, if the technique is not correct, shoulder injuries, rotator cuff tears, rotator cuff tendonitis, all those injuries are because of maybe inappropriate technique of sporting activities or imbalance in the muscle, which can lead to overuse injuries of the tendon and muscles. Then there could be bursitis, again traumatic bursitis, or because of overuse, and there can be nerve injuries because of pressure over the nerve or repetitive stretch on the nerve, or nerve getting entrapped. So uh, there are, as you've seen here, there are different kind of injuries which can happen to the same structure. So all the structures of the body, all the tissues of the body are susceptible to injuries in both ways, in acute way or in an overuse way or chronic way. It all depends on certain factors, which will come to in the next slides. So what are the factors that are associated with sports injuries? This is very important. Why someone gets injured when someone is playing or doing a sporting activity? So there is always a factor behind an injury. Injury would happen because of so many factors, and those factors are sometimes outside our control, and sometimes the factors are inside us. Sometimes they are external factors, and sometimes those are internal factors. So mainly the classification of factors associated with sports injuries are extrinsic factors, the factors which are external to the body that can cause the injury. And there are intrinsic risk factors. So these intrinsic risk factors are internal to the body of the athlete who is playing it. We'll go to more details about these factors, and we'll discuss in detail about the factors which lead to sports injuries. So what are extrinsic risk factors? Here are few examples of extrinsic risk factors. Basically, extrinsic risk factors are the ones which are not inside our body and are related to so many other things which are related to the sports other than the body of the athlete. So first is the exposure. So to some extent, the managers or the rules of the game, or the trainers or the coaches who can modify these extrinsic risk factors, like exposure, how much a person is exposed to the sport and what type of sports is he in. There would be different injuries in different sports. So sports can be non-contact sports or contact sports. So people are more prone to certain kind of injuries depending on the type of sport they play. Then the rules of the game are very, very important in as a factor of injuries. So if we take example, generally the football game is played for 1.5 hours. If I extend the duration of the game to 3 hours, If the duration of the game is extended to 3 hours, then definitely there is a more risk of getting injuries during those 3 hours. So rules of the game, we modified the rules slightly, and which can make a person more susceptible or prone to injuries because of the rules. Then playing time, how much a person is exposed to playing field with opponents or training or such things, or playing time. So playing time is important. The more the playing time, more the chances of getting injured. And what is the position in the team? Certain positions require more of contact with other people, so there is a more chance of injuring himself. And what is the level of competition? How tough is the competition? What kind of demand is there on the physiological side because of this competition? That also defines the exposure of a person leading to injuries. Training is a big, is a very big factor which is related to overuse injuries. So we'll have a look how the training load and volume and intensity and are responsible for sports injuries. If we suddenly increase the level of training, if there is a rapid increase in the training, then there is a chance that we are going to injure someone, because the demand will be built, uh, will be too high in a too short duration of time. And if we suddenly change the type of training, if the type of training is changed all of a sudden, then the body may not be ready for that change and may get injured because of the change in the type of training. And training is always, the training related load is always related with the fatigue, and so with the recovery. So if we are putting load on a person over a week, we need to plan the whole week for a person, how we are going to load that person, how would that recovery happen after those trainings. So all this should be planned. The person should be adequately trained, and enough time should be given, or enough measures should be taken to recover this person after the training. There are different ways of recovery which can come into play, like massages, or hydrotherapy, or pool walks and such things, uh, which help in uh, recovering adequately after a training session. And what are the techniques? If is the athlete following the correct technique while he's training, or that there is a fault in the technique? So coaches are the ones who get to know this very early. They can recognize any technique faults very early, and they need to correct these technique faults so that someone is not training with the wrong technique. Then there are environmental risk factors. Environmental risk factors are like playing surface. If we take example of tennis, there are different surfaces on which the tennis is played. So different surfaces provide different kind of reactions and resistance to the body movements, which can lead to different kind of injuries. Similar is with football. If there are two kind of surfaces like natural grass and astroturf, so there that person is exposed to two different kind of surfaces, which can lead to different kind of injuries. What are the weather conditions to which a person is exposed while training? So these weather conditions could be too hot and too humid conditions, or these could be too cold conditions. And these conditions can also be like, if we ask someone to play at a very high altitude and he has not been training at high altitude, and suddenly he is asked to train at a very high altitude, then there could be a chance that he would get injured. At times, these injuries are not in the musculoskeletal form. These injuries could be in form of heat strokes, heat illness. So we have to take care of the environment while we are looking at the sports injuries. And what time of the day and what time of the season the training is being organized. So environment, like in few areas in India, the temperature is reaches about 40 degrees in summers, or beyond 45 degrees in summers at noon time. And if we organize an event or a training at that time, then it's too much of a heat for body to cope with, and the person would suffer from heat illnesses. So we have to be careful about the environment when we are planning the training sessions, as it is a big factor which exposes someone to injuries. Then equipment, protective equipment, and proper equipment is being used or not by the athlete when they are training. Equipment plays a major role, especially in young athletes who are playing at a very young age. The equipment should be according to the to the person who is training according to his age, according to his size, and what kind of equipment he is using. Like if young children are using a bigger football to train or to play, then there is a lot of then it is not proper for them. They should use the balls which are of smaller size to train. And similarly, if someone is not using proper protective equipment, if the shin guards are not proper, if the mouth guards are not there, or helmet is not there, or say elbow guard or chest guard is not there, and it is required in the sport, then someone is making himself more prone to injuries. Footwear play a very important role because when we are wearing our footwear, we are training in that footwear, and the whole mechanics changes if the footwear quality is not good. If there's a lot of wear and tear of the footwear, then also we make ourselves prone to injuries, which can vary from foot injuries to leg injuries to knee injuries or anywhere else in the body. So because the whole mechanics of the lower extremity changes if the footwear is not proper. So equipment is very important. We have to be very careful about protective equipment, footwear, and sports equipment. It should be of good quality, high quality, and should be properly fitting to the athlete who is using this equipment. Then we come to intrinsic risk factors. There are a lot of intrinsic risk factors which are internal to the athlete. So these risk factors are not external but inside an athlete's body. So these are divided into physical and psychological characteristics. So we'll look at the physical characteristics, which are age and gender. There are certain injuries which occur in certain age groups or more occur in one particular sex, like females having more ACL injuries because of the structure of the female body. They are more prone to ACL injuries. And there are certain kind of injuries which occur generally in one particular age group because the bones are not mature or the bones are too weak. So physical characteristic, age and gender are important. Then what are different kind of somatotypes and physical fitness status of the person? What is the status of his physical fitness, which is very, very important when we are planning a training session. So what kind of weight is he carrying? Is he an endomorph, ectomorph, or a mesomorph? What kind of physique is he carrying? Is he lean? Is he stout, or is it muscular? Is he muscular? And what is the previous level of physical fitness? So all the training should be according to that individual. It should be individualized to some extent, if not always, but still the individual consideration should always be there. What is the previous level of fitness of one person or one athlete? Then previous injury is one of the leading factors in occurrence of new injury. So these injuries can occur to the same structure, same ligament, same joint, or it can also occur in a different but linked joint to the previously injured joint. So if I say someone had a foot injury or ankle injury and his ankle didn't recover very well, and there was still stiffness in the ankle joint and he started training, then he may injure his calf muscle because of inadequate movement present at the ankle joint. So previous injury is a very big risk factor for someone to get a new sports injury. And joint instability is again an intrinsic factor. If someone has instability in his joint, if he does not have enough control, functional control around his joint, which could be because of structural factors uh, or could be because of muscular factors, then the person may get injured again. Posture and alignment of the lower extremity. It is again the alignment and the mechanics of the extremity of the lower extremity, which may make someone susceptible for sports injuries. Leg discrepancy means if there is a difference in the length of the leg of a person, then again there'll be an imbalance. There'll be a structural imbalance in his both sides, in his right and left side, which can lead to sports injuries. As we discussed on the muscle side, there could be imbalances. Imbalances could be in the form of strength or in the form of length of the muscle. So whenever a muscle is working, there is a proper balance which is required in the two groups of the muscle, the agonist and the antagonist muscle, to control the movement. If this balance is disturbed, then there is a chance that a there would be an injury which will happen because of the imbalance in the muscle strength, or if there is an imbalance in the muscle length also. There are scenarios when the tightness in the muscles occur, and this tightness again changes the mechanics of the body and leads to injuries. So there are factors like genetic, endocrine, and metabolic factors which are internal to an athlete. Genetic means if someone has some kind of problem or some issue with the genes, or endocrine system means hormonal problems, or metabolic, like if someone has diabetes type 1, then all these factors make a person prone to certain injuries. And there are psychological characteristics as risk factors. So a person's mental makeup is also responsible for injuries. If the person is not motivated enough, he does not have enough motivation to play, and we ask him to play uh, uh, too much, and if he's too aggressive in his sport, then also he is more prone to injuring himself or someone else. If adequate arousal is there, or if there is no arousal, then that also leads to uh, can be one of the factor leading to injuries in sports. So if we look how an injury occurs, so there is an intrinsic risk factor which is internal to a person's body, which predisposes an athlete, and then he is exposed to external risk factors which are environment, which are training, which are rest, recovery, weather conditions, equipment, and then makes him susceptible to injury, and then one single event that happens and it leads to injury. So overall, all these risk factors, when there is an inciting event which occurs to someone, when the risk factors were there, both internal and external risk factors lead to an injury. And this is the mechanism of injury which has happened there. So it is very important to understand it's not just one event which has led to injury, but the person was predisposed and was susceptible before, and then one single event have happened where the injury took place. So now the injury has taken place. What do we do once injury has happened? So once an injury has happened, we need to follow this principle, mnemonics, meaning stop, STOP. So we need to approach an athlete now who has fallen down. And as I told you that many a times in India, uh, coach is the first one, because sports does not happen only at the highest level. Sports is happening in the playing fields, in the school fields, in the college fields, and not always a medical person will be available there. So how do we manage injuries at that time? So first of all, stop the athlete from participating or moving. Thus, stop the game if it is required, and stop the athlete from participating in the sport. Okay, and then talk to the athlete. This is very important. Once you approach someone who has had an injury, so the person could be injured while he is still conscious, or or he is unconscious. So when you approach, then you need to talk to the player. You don't know till this point whether he's seriously injured or is it a minor injury, what kind of injury it is. So when you approach a person, then you need to talk to the injured athlete and ask him what happened, how it happened, how does it feel. These are very important questions. First of all, he should be responding to these questions. Whether he is responding, is he responding coherently to these questions, or his answers are not coherent with the question. You need to observe everything. So you talk to him, ask him what happened, how it happened, what does he feel, and where does it hurt. Once he tells where does it hurt, then you need to see like. Like what structure could be injured, what part he could have injured. But still, you should not end there. You should ask him, is there any other place which is hurting? Because sometimes it may happen one place is hurting more than the other, but still there could be more injuries. So you need to take care of that. And again, you need to ask him a simple question: do you think can you play on? So let him come up with his view, what he thinks about his injury, whether he can play or he can't play, what does he think about it. If he can't play, then you have to move him out, and it's very important how you're moving this player out of the field. So there should be proper arrangement. The part should be properly protected while you're moving him out. We will come to that in further slides. How you will be moving the player out. And observe while talking. So O is observation. So observe while talking to the player. Is the athlete in distress? Is he lying in some abnormal posture? So you're talking to the athlete means you're not touching the athlete yet. You're not touching the player yet. You're just talking and trying to know what happened exactly and how serious does it look. And then you're observing everything. Do you think that he is in distress means he is in too much of pain, or is he lying in the unusual posture which is not normally acquired when an injury happens? So you need to have a look at him, the way he's lying, which can be indicative of certain serious injuries. Is he moving or is he not moving? Moving is a better condition than not moving. Okay, so if someone is not moving, then you have to be very careful why is he not moving. And then you have to look at the injury site and observe, is there any swelling, is there any deformity, the joint looks in place, or there is a sudden swelling or sudden discoloration or change of color is there. So this is very, very important, because initially if you recognize this, you will be able to protect the joint. You can protect the structure, or you can protect the athlete himself if you have taken care of all these things and you are observing these things while you have approached the injured player. So then, can the athlete move the injured part? Is it possible? Is he able to move the injured part? Means that it tells the gravity of the injury or the grade of injury, whether he is able to move it or not move it. If he is not able to move it, means there could be a major injury, or there could be more injury or trauma to that part that has happened. And once he is moving, does it hurt to move? Is he able to move it all through the range? Say if there is elbow, then is he able to bend his elbow completely or not? If yes, if he is not able to move, then you need to arrange an appropriate transport and transfer him to out of the field. And P is prevent further injury. This is very important. You need to prevent any further damage to the joint. Once there is an injury and someone is injured and is lying on the field, you need to prevent any harm or any further damage to that part, which is very, very important. There is again another mnemonic which I would like to tell you here is toe taps, TOTAPS. We'll go through this one by one. So first of all, as we said, you need to talk, you need to observe, to touch, active movement, passive movements, and skill tests. Though in the stop also we discussed about this, but here we'll touch this in further detail. Uh, how would you do that? So talk, as we discussed in stop, you need to talk to the player and need to ask him specific questions: how it happened, how does it feel, how is he feeling. So it is very, very important whether he is responding or is he not responding, and whether if he is responding, then his response is coherent or incoherent. Is it making any sense or not making any sense? At times here we also need to look at, or uh, like uh, uh, at times it happens you are asking a very good question about that, or two questions to recognize if his head is not concussed, is usually what did you have in the morning, what did you eat in the morning, or where are we, who are we playing against. So these simple questions are very important, and you need to look at the response of the player, whether he is giving proper response, he is not confused, he is not in delirium. Okay, so all those things are very important. And then again, observe, as we discussed before, observe for any swelling, any discoloration, or any deformity. If you think that something is not in place, then you should be very careful. Okay. And once you've observed and you've talked, only then you need to touch the player. Don't touch the player before you've talked or observed, because these two things may indicate the severity of the injury. Okay, and will give you a fair idea about if the injury is severe or not, or how you need to touch the player. So you touch and look for tenderness, temperature, and pain. No need to move him. Okay, once you are sure that it looks fine, then you ask him to move actively. If he's able to do that, only then at times it is required to move passively, means with the coach's help. And if he is able to get up, if he is able to move the part actively and passively adequately, then only you will look for any skill test or how he can do any other thing. So, for example, if athlete has a injury in the lower extremity and he has fallen down, and if you ask him to move his knee joint and he is able to do that, if he is able to bend it completely, then you ask him to stand up. If he is able to stand up, there is no deformity, no swelling, no discoloration, okay, and he can stand up, he can move his joint, then only you'll ask him to walk around and maybe do jumping activities if required, if permissible, then only you'll decide whether he can play again or he can't play at this point in time. So these two are very important: stop and toe taps. Very important mnemonics for coaches to understand the severity of injury when they approach a player with who has been injured. So now we know that there has been an injury. So what do we do now? What is the management for this injury? So we'll talk about the first management, which is given by the mnemonic price. There are three mnemonics which are used. One is price, the other one is pricer, which I'll cover in the end after this slide. The last R is the refer, and a recent one which is being used is police, POLICE. So we'll go one by one on this price. So once you know that someone is injured, then you need to protect the injury from further damage. P stands for protect the injury from further damage. So a part is injured or an athlete is injured, so you need to protect. If I look at the athlete as a whole, then you need to make sure if there's a rain or if there's lightning or some such scenario or the crowd is there, then to move him out to a place. Or if there is a heat stroke which has happened, so you need to protect him from the heat immediately. You can't do everything there in the sun. So you have to move him out. So you're protecting the player as a whole from this situation which can aggravate or harm him further. Secondly is the protecting that particular part or specific area, specific joint or specific muscle from getting injured again. So if you think there is a fracture or dislocation which has happened, don't try to reduce this. Never try to reduce any such thing on the field. And if you're not a qualified medical person who can take care of that injury, don't do that. What you have to do is you have to protect. So use any splint, any support. Jersey can become, if it is folded rightly, it can become a support, or use some simple foot rules, wooden foot rules, or wooden slabs, or such things to splint the part and protect it, uh, and then move him out of the See, we have to be very careful if we are suspecting any head injury, because at times with the head, the spine can also be damaged. So if you think there is a head injury, then you have to be very careful while moving the person out. So P stands for protect any further damage. So whatever damage has happened, you have to protect any further damage by proper handling, proper recognition of the injury, and properly splinting or supporting that part. Then you give rest to the part. So this is now change, and this rest is not complete rest. Okay, this is an active rest, or as we will see as we will see further in the police mnemonic, which has been changed by optimum loading. Or again, this is not complete rest, or it is active rest which needs to be followed. Rest your injury for first 2 or 3 days. So acuteness of an injury subsides in 2 to 3 days, which is 48 to 72 hours. So it again depends upon the severity of the injury that has happened, and how you're going to provide active rest to that part. Need not give complete rest to the athlete. Okay, but it depends again on the severity of the condition or severity of the injury. Then you need to ice the area. Icing is very important. uh, Icing along with compression is gives very good results initially. So you need to ice the part for 15 to 20 minutes every 2 to 3 hours. This ice should be applied in a covering in a maybe in a polythene bag or an ice bag, which should be kept over the part, and ice should be done more regularly initially in the injury in the first 48 to 72 hours. It helps in relieving pain. It helps in relieving in stopping bleeding, internal bleeding. So you have to be doing ice therapy initially along with compression. Compression can be provided with a compression bandage. So compression bandage can be worn to the part, um, and elastic bandage could be used, or it could be elasticated tubular bandage. Tubular bandage like a sleeve which can be worn over that part. Okay, and this should not be left on while someone is sleeping. So again, at rest it is not so much required. Intermittent bandaging is better. So intermittent bandaging can be done. The compression, what compression does, it reduces down the swelling in the joint, which may in long term help in reducing the stiffness around the joint. And then elevate the limb over the heart level. It should be as the fluid flows towards against the gradient. So it should be kept above the heart level to reduce the swelling. So as we discussed, police mnemonic is being used. So P stands for protect and OL is optimum loading. So the concept now is that we need to optimally load the structure which is injured. So initially, if the rest is required, provide rest, but other body part should be moving and should be training or doing activities which can be performed, and then optimally load the injured structure if required, so that the healing takes place. And this is also helpful in reducing time down the healing time, and good healing to happen, because if those structures are being used, then those structures would have better healing process while those are loaded or stressed optimally. Then ice, but optimal loading is very important. This concept, you should not be loading someone who has injured or fractured. So you have to be very careful. Let the expert provide his view and opinion and prescribe what needs to be done. So be careful here. And again, IC is again ice compression and elevation, as it was in price. So refer, the last or the R part of the pricer is refer. There are a lot of specialists who can have a look at the injury and determine the gravity of the problem, can determine the extent of the damage, and what kind of management is required for long-term benefit of the athlete. So need to refer. Don't try to reduce anything. Don't try to correct anything. Just protect the person to price price R or police and move him and refer him to the specialist. Let the specialist take and have a look at the injury and then give his expert opinion about the injury. So refer is very, very, very important. Sometimes even the experts may further refer someone to a super specialist for further uh, opinions. So refer is very, very, very important. Only protect the person, give the first aid, first management, and then move him out. If the injury looks severe, then refer him to an expert who can give his opinion about the injury. So that was the initial or short-term management of the injury. Now, when we look at the long-term management, here also coaching has a lot to do, because you are dealing with the athletes for the long-term development, or for the whole season you are looking at the athlete. So long-term management is also very, very important when you are dealing with sports injuries. In these long-term management, the initial, the lowest part of the pyramid is the control, inflammation control, and restore integrity. Here, generally, the person is under the medical supervision, and then address muscle inhibition. Again, in this part, it is being managed by either sports physiotherapist or the medical team to address muscle inhibitions, to restore the control over the joint and restore the movement at the joint, and then reflex and strength of and endurance of that region or the part needs to be gained. So restoring muscle strength and endurance. When someone is coming out of the injury, then it is very important what has been the duration for which he has been out of the field or training because of that injury. So this part will depend a lot upon for how long the person has been away from the sport. So but before he enters training with the team or training regular full training, it is very important that he has restored the muscle strength and endurance and has restored the reflex reactions, means his balance and his control is good before he moves into full training. So, along with that, once these are done, then restore functional movement patterns. Proper technique, proper movement patterns are restored when he returns to his functional activities or to his training activities. So, this pyramid needs to be looked at while we are thinking about the long term management of the injuries. As we know, as we have seen, that a previous injury is a big risk factor for a new injury to occur. So we need to be very careful when we are dealing with our injuries so that the person recovers adequately and properly with full control on his body, on his movements, on his muscles, and a good strength and endurance and flexibility with good range of motion in the joint which is affected, and now he can start participating in the sport specific activities. Those sport specific activities will further improve his stamina or his aerobic and anaerobic capacities depending upon his sport and the demand of the sport, and then he can gradually participate in the sporting activities. uh, we'll talk a bit about injury prevention, which is very important when we look at the development of athlete or in the season. How do we prevent injuries? So there are certain things we need to do while to prevent injuries. First is improving and maintaining fitness. Again, this is related to the load and the training thing. We need to improve and maintain the fitness of the people before loading them. The loading should always be optimum and depending on the previous status of the physical fitness. So improving and maintaining fitness is important. Then adequate and proper warm up should be there before someone joins the full training program. So this is very important. It should be adequate and appropriate to the sport. So warm-ups can't be, warm-up has a general part component and the specific component to the sport. So general component is raising the heart rate and increasing the blood supply in the muscles and gradually building it up. And then there is specific portion of the sport specific warm-up, which emphasizes upon certain drills which are required for that specific sport. So adequate and appropriate warm-up should be done. Then wear protective clothing and appropriate shoes. So along with clothing, protective equipment according to the rules of the game. So if shin guards are required, then the person should be wearing proper shin guards fitting to his size, which is required. And adequate clothing or proper clothing, protective clothing should be there depending upon the environment, depending upon the demand of the sport, depending upon the contact in the sport, and a proper and good appropriate footwear should be there. There's be supervision of a qualified coach. A coach should always be supervising for correct techniques, appropriate training program, and environment and appropriate equipment. Coaches are the ones who have to look and intervene here when a program, when the training is going on, whether the person is using correct techniques or the program is appropriate for him or the environment appropriate equipment is being provided to the athlete while he is training. There are certain strategies for prevention of injuries which can be modified. Keeping these strategies in mind, the training program can be modified to prevent injuries. Stretching should be performed during the warm up, and stretching is one thing which provides elasticity to the muscles. It should be performed in the warm up time. Then eccentric training of the muscles is important, as a lot of injuries happen during the eccentric phase, in fact, eccentric contraction of the muscle. So eccentric training should be an important component in the training in the season or pre-season time. Then core stability is important as it prevents a lot of injuries. So it is the core or around the abdomen and the lower back area, the muscle should be trained enough according to the need of the sport. And core stability should be part of regular training programs. It prevents a lot of injuries, especially to the groin area, to the thigh muscles, maybe to the knee joint. And balance training in some form should be again component of training. So balance training gives more stability to the body when it is landing, when the movements are, when the agility movements or sharp movements or cuts or pivoting like movements are required. So balance training should be component of the training program. And then strapping and bracing can prevent certain injuries, like in the ankle. If someone is wearing crepe bandage around the ankle or is being strapped, then it prevents injuries. Then loading, we have discussed a few times about load and training, so it should be taken care of. And fitness and conditioning of the athlete is very important when you are preventing injuries. So these are certain strategies for injury prevention. And now we have understood about what is the importance of the risk factors in an injury, how an injury occurs, and then what should be the initial management for sports injuries, and long-term management of sports injuries. What are the components of long-term management of sports injuries? How a preventive program should be planned, and what should be the components of preventing sports injuries. I thank you very much for being here and listening to this program. I hope this will help our coaches and physical education students and young coaches in managing injuries and preventing injuries. Thank you very much.